The Omani Sultanate, based in Muscat, was a formidable maritime power. After successfully kicking the Portuguese out of their homeland, they didn't just stop there. They expanded their influence down the Swahili coast, all the way to modern-day Tanzania and Mozambique. Their empire wasn't built on conquering vast swathes of land, but on controlling key coastal cities and the lucrative trade routes that passed through them. Think of it as a network of pearls strung along the coastline. These Omani-controlled cities, like Mombasa and Zanzibar, became bustling hubs. They were cosmopolitan centers where merchants from Arabia, Persia, India, and Africa all met to trade. What were they trading? Everything from spices, ivory, and gold to enslaved people, a tragic but central part of the economy at the time. The Omani presence brought a unique blend of Arab-Islamic culture, which mixed with local African traditions to create the rich Swahili culture we know today. Mosques were built, Arabic script was adopted, and a new ruling class of Omani Arabs established itself. Now, where does Somalia fit into this picture? Well, the southern Somali coast, particularly cities like Mogadishu, Marka, and Brava, had their own long and proud history. These were ancient city-states with their own sultans and a deep-rooted trading heritage that stretched back centuries. For a long time, they were largely independent, existing within the Omani sphere of influence but not directly ruled by them. They paid tribute, acknowledged the Sultan of Oman's authority in a general sense, but mostly ran their own affairs. This arrangement was more about economic partnership than outright political control. The game-changer was a man named Said bin Sultan. In the early 19th century, he became the ruler of Oman and had grand ambitions. He was a visionary leader who saw the immense potential of the East African coast. In a bold move, he relocated his capital from Muscat all the way to Zanzibar in 1840. This wasn't just a symbolic gesture, it was a massive statement of intent. He wanted to centralize his control over his African territories and turn Zanzibar into the commercial heart of the Indian Ocean. From his new base in Zanzibar, Said began to assert more direct control over the Somali coastal cities. He appointed his own governors, known as Lawalis, and established garrisons of soldiers. The formerly semi-independent cities of the Banadar coast, Mogadishu, Marka, and Brava, were brought firmly under the Sultan of Zanzibar's rule. This wasn't always a peaceful process. There were local resistances and power struggles, but ultimately, the Sultan's power, backed by his formidable navy, was too strong to overcome. The Omani Zanzibari influence was now a direct political reality on the Somali coast. Under Zanzibari rule, trade flourished, but it also became more centralized and controlled. The Sultan's government collected taxes and duties on all goods passing through the ports. The plantation economy, particularly for cloves in Zanzibar and Pemba, expanded dramatically, relying heavily on enslaved labor from the African interior. While this period brought a degree of stability and economic integration, it also meant that the wealth generated from Somali trade was increasingly flowing south to the coffers of the Sultan in Zanzibar, not staying within the local communities. Just as the Sultanate of Zanzibar was consolidating its power, new players were arriving on the scene, the European powers. By the mid-19th century, Britain, France, and Italy were buzzing around the Horn of Africa like sharks smelling blood in the water. Why? The opening of the Suez Canal in 1869 changed everything. Suddenly, the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden became the main highway between Europe and Asia. The Somali coast, which sits right at the entrance to this vital waterway, went from being a regional trading hub to a piece of prime global real estate overnight. The Europeans weren't just interested in trade, they wanted strategic naval bases. Britain, which already controlled Egypt and the Suez Canal, wanted to secure the sea lanes to its prized colony, India. They established a protectorate in the northern part of Somalia, which became known as British Somaliland, primarily to supply their garrison in Aden with meat and other provisions. France, not wanting to be left out, grabbed a small but crucial piece of territory at the mouth of the Red Sea, creating French Somaliland, which is modern-day Djibouti. This left the southern coast, the part controlled by the Sultan of Zanzibar, as the main prize for another ambitious European power, Italy. Italy was a newly unified nation, desperate to build its own colonial empire and catch up with Britain and France. They saw the Benatar coast as their chance. At first, they moved cautiously. They signed treaties with the Sultan, leasing the ports of Mogadishu, Marga, and Brava. Essentially, they paid the Sultan an annual fee to administer the territory on his behalf. But this was just a stepping stone. The Sultanate of Zanzibar, which had once been so powerful, was now in decline. It was heavily in debt to European and Indian bankers, and its authority was propped up by the British. Italy knew this and began to put more and more pressure on the Sultan. They complained that his administration wasn't effective, that he couldn't control the interior, and that he was an obstacle to progress, a common colonial excuse. The inevitable happened in the late 1880s and early 1890s. Using a mix of diplomatic pressure, financial leverage, and the threat of military force, Italy compelled the Sultan to sell his rights to the Benatar coast. The Sultan, weakened and under British influence, had little choice but to agree. In 1905, the Benatar coast was formally incorporated into the colony of Italian Somaliland. The centuries-old Omani-Zanzibari presence on the Somali coast came to an end, not with a bang, but with the signing of a treaty under duress. So, what's the legacy of all this? The Omani period left a lasting cultural, religious, and architectural imprint on Somalia's coastal cities. It integrated them into a vast Indian Ocean trading network. The European scramble, however, carved up the Somali people into 5 different territories: British, Italian, and French Somaliland, plus the Somali-inhabited regions of Ethiopia and Kenya. This colonial division created artificial borders that ignored traditional clan territories and sowed the seeds of future conflicts that continue to affect the region to this day. The story of the scramble for Somalia's coasts is a perfect example of how global geopolitics can drastically reshape a region. It shows the decline of an older, sea-based empire like the Omani Sultanate and the rise of the new, industrial-powered European colonial empires. It's a complex and layered history, where local leaders, Omani sultans, and European diplomats all maneuvered for power, with the Somali people often caught in the middle. Understanding this history is crucial to understanding modern Somalia. The legacy of these competing influences, the deep cultural ties to Arabia and the Indian Ocean world, combined with the political fractures of the colonial era, is still very much alive. It's a powerful reminder that the past is never really past, it's always with us, shaping the present. Thanks so much for joining me on this historical journey today. I hope you found it as fascinating as I do. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button, and if you haven't already, consider subscribing for more deep dives into history. Let me know in the comments what other historical topics you'd like to see covered. Until next time, stay curious.